Kablammers! Hello, my holly jolly friends. I hope you've been having a joyous holiday season. I am sad to say that it cannot last forever, though, and even now, the last of the Christmas tacos are being pulled from the tree and devoured by the fire, as is tradition in most North American households. When we reach the end of yet another year, it is only natural to stop and reflect on it, to remember the good times and the less good times, the lessons we've learned and the new friends we've made, the tacos we've devoured during other major and minor holidays. This is a Nintendo channel, though, so naturally we must also look back at Nintendo and see how they did, pondering on their successes and failures, their highs and lows, their great decisions and not as great decisions. So join me, my friends. Let us look back on the Switch's second year on the market and see how Nintendo fared. Let's completely dissect and examine every single one of their products and decisions with intense, unyielding scrutiny. Or, whatever. Word of warning here, this is gonna be one of those videos. Like, every time I quote-unquote complain about something more than once, people tend to get on my case, even if I believe my quote-unquote complaints are part of an ongoing conversation and are thus consistently relevant. So just know that this is a review of everything that happened throughout the year, so if you already found yourself getting tired of hearing me quote-unquote complain about certain things, then I don't know what to tell you, because we are dredging it all up again here. Now, Nintendo's 2018 was at something of a disadvantage right out of the gate, because 2017 was bonkers. I still believe it was easily one of the strongest years Nintendo has ever had, and it was certainly the strongest first year for any new Nintendo system. I mean, it opened with Zelda and ended with Mario, with a whole host of other great titles in between. Just shy of one major title per month, in fact. It had one of those legendary, wished-for but never truly expected big E3s that just offers announcement after announcement. In the very beginning, no one knew exactly how Nintendo's new little console would fare, but for me at least, the teaser for Metroid Prime 4 was when I realized that Nintendo was back in business. They were back to making big, awesome, ambitious games that fans really wanted. Because their mindset seemed to have shifted so completely, and because the lineup was so good, I did sort of get my hopes up for 2018. I mean, it felt like they had learned their lessons from the Wii U. They had realized that they needed to up production and get big titles out at a good rate to keep people interested. I tried to bring my expectations down a smidge and look at things a little more realistically, and when I did, I decided that the rate of big games probably would decrease at least a little. It only made sense that Nintendo would build up their early library and strategically dump a bunch of it into that first year, and that it would taper off a little bit after that. But I did still believe that the release schedule would stay at a certain level without any dry periods, and that their games would continue to live up to this new standard of quality. The question is then, did they? Did Nintendo meet my expectations and come at least reasonably close to matching their stellar 2017? Well, I think you already know what I'm gonna say, but let's take a closer look at 2018, starting from the beginning. The Nintendo Direct Mini at the start of the year sort of set the stage for 2018. We were expecting another massive showcase revealing tons of big-name games like we got in January 2017. Normally, these kinds of expectations are unrealistic, but in this case, we didn't actually know of any confirmed big hitters coming out during the year, so I think it was reasonable to expect an announcement or two. In terms of game volume, the Mini Direct was anything but mini. We got reveals for a new Mario Tennis, ports of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze and Hyrule Warriors, a Donkey Kong-themed DLC campaign for Mario and Rabbids, as well as a pretty decent chunk of third-party ports, including Dark Souls. Ports of Bayonetta 1 and 2 had also been announced at the Game Awards the month before, and a few days after the Direct, Nintendo revealed Labo. This was a pretty darn big list of games, and most of them were slated for the first half of the year. But this was when I became a little wary. I made a video about how I didn't think it was necessarily a huge problem, but I did believe that the first half of 2018 wasn't super great. I'm of the opinion that ports and smaller games are great for supplementing, but much more important are big, new games. In 2017, Nintendo was able to lean on a few ports because 1, they also had the huge tentpole titles to hold everything up, and 2, one of those ports was Mario Kart 8, which was a port of a huge tentpole title. But despite neither of those things being true in the first half of 2018, Nintendo leaned on ports harder than ever. And I always must clarify, I know there are plenty of folks who are huge Kirby fans, or maybe even huge Mario Tennis fans, and to them, the new games were indeed a very big deal. When I talk about big titles, I'm talking about sales numbers, pure and simple. Kirby and Mario sports games are solid performers, but huge system sellers they are not. And Star Allies and Aces just didn't make for an impressive lineup of new games for a whole half a year. Here's the thing though, I was prepared to give a lot of credit to the first half of 2018 because even if there were only 2 new traditional games, I'll talk about Labo in a bit, they both looked like they were going to be really cool. It was my first time returning to each series in decades and I was actually really excited to play them. I thought, okay, these are not games I've been into a lot before, but it looks like Nintendo's going all out with them and they look like great fun, so let's see if they can capture my heart. And that's when things kind of fell apart. As you might remember from my review, Kirby had good gameplay, but it felt like only a chunk of a full game. I completed every level in 4 or 5 hours. And lots of Nintendo games are easy enough to be very accessible. I get that, I completely get that, and I'm used to it, but Kirby took it too far. It was so easy that it was hard to even have fun with it, especially considering its overall lack of interesting ideas in level design. In the end, despite the return of the cool fan-favorite ability combining mechanic, it was only okay. I haven't had a chance to check out the free DLC yet, and I'm not gonna get way into it here because the whole free update thing is a bigger discussion for another day, but I will say right now that no, I am not okay with releasing a largely empty game and only bringing it up to a more passable level months and months later. Mario Tennis Aces was very similar. The base gameplay was good, really good, but it just didn't have enough content. Unless you wanted to play against people online again and again and again forever, you could do everything there was to do in a few hours. And this was despite the fact that Aces saw the return of the adventure mode, which fans had been clamoring for ages. The mode was good in concept, but it ended up feeling really rushed and padded and uninspired. And I'm not saying that Nintendo necessarily intentionally fooled us in some devious way, but I can say that I felt a little bamboozled into playing the game. There's like a single good cutscene in the whole adventure mode that they used in the trailer, and it made it look like this crazy cool thing, and it was like, oh my gosh, there's a story in this. Just like with Zelda and Mario and the announcement of Metroid Prime 4, Mario Tennis is yet another series that's returning to form. It's getting that injection of ambition that every Nintendo series needs. And then it was just like, nope. That is not what this game is. This is a highly polished skeleton of a game. I went into 2018 feeling that Nintendo was a changed company and that they were really going to start giving their all going forward. But while I do think that they have indeed changed a substantial amount for the better, Kirby and Mario Tennis have tampered my feelings a good deal. Those games kind of shook me. They reminded me that Nintendo is still fully capable of taking the easy way out and only putting exactly as much effort into a game as they absolutely have to because they know that it will sell regardless. I know that might sound really, really harsh, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's the vibe that I get. That was the vibe that I got when I played those games. I knew that Nintendo was capable of so much more. And hey, I don't know if all these free updates for both games are an apology for making such empty experiences, or if they had to space out the content because they needed to cut development time short to meet deadlines, or if the games only felt like empty experiences because Nintendo chopped content out so that they could release it for free later in order to keep people returning to the game Splatoon style, like a marketing strategy kind of thing. But whatever the case, for me, these games were something of a reality check. Nintendo may be back, baby, but they ain't as back, baby, as they maybe could be. Beyond Kirby, Mario Tennis, and ports, Labo was really the only other significant Switch release in the first half. Labo was one of those left-field Nintendo ideas that was great in concept, even if it didn't end up setting the world on fire. I actually kind of think Nintendo might have been hoping for a Wii-style craze to break out. They were probably hoping it would become the next big hot toy for kids, but requiring a $300 system on top of each set's already steep price tag limited it right out of the gate. It was cool, but it wasn't a cool enough thing to go out and buy a Switch for, so it's sold to a relatively small install base, thus throttling its potential to become a hot toy in the greater market. However, when Kimishima said that only time would tell if it was successful, I don't think he was trying to deflect or downplay the issue like most other people do. Nintendo might have even realized that its potential was limited at launch, but that it's the kind of product that will probably keep selling and selling throughout the life of the system. Because the Switch is only going to get cheaper as time goes on, and eventually there will be a huge influx of kids picking it up. At that point, Labo could see a lot of good sales. It still might not end up becoming a classroom fixture like Nintendo's probably hoping, but I could see it multiplying its current sales considerably. And hey, it certainly deserves it. I got to play around with the Variety Kit a little, and it was a good time. It's definitely a very unique experience building these contraptions and seeing them come alive in the game. The overall concept is extremely novel. It just doesn't extend too far beyond that novelty, and in the end, you're stuck with a bunch of big cardboard things that you don't know what to do with because you paid a bunch of money for, so you don't want to get rid of them, but you're done playing the minigames pretty much forever. So between two disappointing new games, a host of ports that were definitely solid, but not huge by any means, and Labo, for whatever it was worth, between all that, the first half of 2018 was a bit of a bummer. I've said it before, but it felt a little like we were back in the Wii U days. We had a good number of solid titles, a decent selection of games for pre-existing customers, assuming you hadn't played all the originals on the Wii U already. But nothing truly exciting, nothing that was gonna get Switches flying off the shelves, none of the absurd brilliance of the year before. By the time March came around, the first half schedule was already set, but we could tell that the second half would be a different story. The March Nintendo Direct finally gave us our great big fat game reveal, a new Smash Brothers, completely out of the blue. It felt like it hadn't been nearly long enough since Smash 4, but there it was. It was not a port, it was a brand new game. Smash Ultimate ended up being the one big tentpole game of the entire year. It was the only first-party release from a major franchise that wasn't a port and didn't feel like a half-hearted effort. And yes, this is disappointing. I would say a major release every quarter would be best, or at the very least 2 per year, but here, no. Just the one, and right at the end of the year too. We had to wait an awfully long time for our one big 2018 game. But you know what makes this a whole lot easier to swallow? Everything that Smash Ultimate is, and was, and did. From the initial reveal, to the mind-blowing character reveals, to the World of Light reveal, to the reveals of the countless modes and features that were added to the game, to the actual game itself that we ended up getting, Smash Ultimate was everything we could have wanted from a major release. Sure, the characters they chose to reveal last took a little wind out of the sails of the final direct, and both over-promotion and leaks sapped away a little bit of the hype, but overall, the game has been the dose of Nintendo magic that 2018 really needed. Nintendo was like, okay, so there wasn't much else this year, and some of those other games ended up being lame, but at least you're getting Smash, and trust me, you're really getting Smash, and really get Smash we did. As far as the second half of the year went, it was definitely an improvement in ways. One very awesome thing that was announced right before Smash Ultimate was Splatoon 2's Octo Expansion. This was another bit of that Nintendo magic and ambition that we had been missing. You can watch my review if you want my full thoughts on it, but I felt it added a ton to the Splatoon universe. It was exactly what the game needed. The second half of 2018 was actually a great year for DLC in general. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 got its Torna the Golden Country expansion, which was a massive standalone campaign, and I don't know a lot about the game, but it sounded like it was a big deal. Then Mario & Rabbids is technically a third-party thing, but it's exclusive, so it's definitely worth mentioning, and its Donkey Kong Adventure DLC also ended up being a terrific addition to the game. And considering the rest of the year had left me wanting more, this influx of great DLC finally gave me something really fun to do on my Switch, beside grinding away at Hyrule Warriors. Octopath Traveler was also a third-party exclusive, and though I unfortunately haven't had time to play it yet, I fell in love with the demo, and based on reception, it seems like it turned out to be one of the most important Switch games of the year. Super Mario Party was another winner of sorts. Mario Party games are a lot like Mario sports games. They're kind of inevitable, and they tend to only sell pretty well, so they're not exceptionally exciting. But after Mario Tennis Aces, I was happy to see that Nintendo did more than the bare minimum with the latest party game. And in fact, one of the selling points was the return of the board format that fans had been begging for. Yes, just like Mario Tennis, Super Mario Party set itself up as a return to form. The difference was that it actually pulled it off. It actually delivered on its promises. And the game just overall shipped with enough content to actually feel like a complete package. Plus, of course, the minigames were just plain fun. Like with most games in this video, go check out my review if you want my full thoughts. There were other decent games as well. Captain Toad was a fine schedule filler, even if the other ports earlier in the year probably had it pretty well beat. Sushi Striker was a weird one. In some ways, it was pretty ambitious considering it was a puzzle game with lots of cutscenes and dialogue and such, but being a $50 puzzle game about sushi without the benefit of being tied to a pre-existing IP and competing with the 3DS version, the Switch version kinda seemed doomed to fail. I didn't really like the demo that much, so I didn't pick it up, but I heard good things from the people who played it. Even if it wasn't handled perfectly, I'll always give kudos to a game that ends up good. And it sounds like Sushi Striker was something of a good game in 2018, so there you go. The second half of 2018 did come with its own share of disappointments, though. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee sort of straddled the disappointment line. It had a lot of good stuff going for it, but in some ways it did still feel to me like only as much effort went into it as was strictly necessary, at least in terms of graphics and content. There were a few visual details I really liked, like the accurate Pokemon sizes, and I loved the way it handled wild Pokemon encounters, but as a whole it still felt a little cheap. It still felt like it was a little below that quality standard. Not so cheap that I felt swindled, but cheap enough that I lamented the kind of Gen 1 remake that it could have been, that I dreamed about as a kid. Then there was E3. Now, I don't even care what y'all say, half a year later, and I still maintain that Nintendo's E3 presentation was disappointing and that it's okay to feel that way. I mean, come on, E3 is all about new game announcements. The Ridley reveal was great, but the year had been so sorely lacking in big hitters that I didn't think it was unreasonable to expect one or two solid reveals for the near future. But for the most part, all we got were two games. There was Demon X Machina, which does look pretty cool, but a big, far-reaching game it is not. And at the time, I was just like, great, I don't know what this is. It's a robot game, I guess. Then there was Super Mario Party. Again, it was indeed a fun game, but again, Mario Party ain't much to get super excited over, especially when it's Nintendo's one single new first-party reveal in an E3 presentation. And people love to be like, E3 isn't that important anymore, Nintendo wants to do their own thing. But then how do you explain 2017? Where were the people being like, I wonder why Nintendo revealed so much at E3 2017, seeing as E3 isn't that important and they like to do their own thing? They were nowhere, because of course E3 is important. Nintendo does like to do their own thing, and they used Nintendo Directs very well in 2018, but come on, you can't blast everyone's faces off one year, then bring next to nothing the following year. You've got to think at least a little bit about audience expectation. You've got to consider how people are gonna react. That's showmanship, that's PR, that's just how these things work. Anyway, I'll move on now. Though I will say, I know some people got mad because it seemed like I was just making video after video about that E3 presentation, but I've been wanting to explain myself a bit. There was the reaction video, my initial thoughts as the presentation happened. Makes sense. Then there was my more in-depth discussion video where I gave my opinion. Standard practice. Then I just thought it was funny how expectations had been so high for the presentation and that so many people were basically sure we were gonna get another 2017 situation, so I wanted to make another video about how you really can't expect anything with Nintendo. It was something of a follow-up to my Kings of Left Field video. I also covered my thoughts on the presentation in my The Highs and Lows of E3 2018 video. This video was more about E3 as a whole, because I thought it was funny how every single presentation was either great or a big disappointment. It was meant to reach beyond just the Nintendo crowd that already watches my videos. It was kind of its own thing. That was at least my thinking, though I can see how some people thought I was just going on and on about the whole thing for way too long. Maybe I was, I don't know, but at least I wanted to let you know why that was. Another low point for Nintendo in 2018 was, you've probably been waiting for this, Nintendo Switch Online. NSO was basically the exact opposite of Smash Ultimate. If Smash was nothing but hype the whole year, and nearly every move seemed to be the right one, NSO was nothing but blah. There was like no aspect of the service or the announcements surrounding it that didn't make everyone mad. The frustrating lack of info for months and months, the tone-deaf Nintendo Direct presentation that pretended so hard that we should be happy to pay for something we'd been getting for free that it felt kind of insulting, the features that didn't extend to every game, the less than exciting lineup of NES games. It's just been a mess, and the problem is, it still doesn't matter, because anyone who wants to play Smash is gonna pay for it anyway, so Nintendo doesn't necessarily have to do a single thing to improve the service if they don't want to. They know we'll keep paying for it, so they can just sit back and rake in the cash. Okay, in complete fairness, they did end up doing well by me with the price. $20 a year already ain't terrible, and splitting it with multiple friends in a family plan turned it into a pretty inconsequential cost. I still feel gross that I had to do it, but whatever. That's what we end up all saying, isn't it? Whatever. That does lead me to another very low of 2018, though. There we are, wringing our hands together and pulling out our hair and wondering when Nintendo was gonna announce the stupid Virtual Console already. Finally, Reggie cruises on up with his thumbs tucked into his suspenders and he's like, hey, we're not bringing the Virtual Console to the Switch. Those products that you're ready and willing to pay for? Can't have them. But hey, you know that crummy service we're forcing you to pay for? That's what you get instead. Enjoy playing Dragon Fight or whatever dumb junk they used to trick people into buying on the NES 30 years ago. Peace, I'm outie. So yeah, can't exactly say that was the same Nintendo I thought we were looking at coming out of 2017. Sometimes it seems that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And for a company that loves money so much, Nintendo apparently still hates money. Fortunately, other good stuff did start to come out of 2018 near the end. Nintendo largely made up for the lack of big announcements at E3 with late-year reveals. Their final regular Direct of the year gave us announcements for both Luigi's Mansion 3 and Animal Crossing. These were big, they were exciting, they were from well-performing franchises. Animal Crossing in particular tends to sell like gangbusters, and despite its cutesy casual nature, is most definitely a system seller. Then, of course, just to cap off the whole year, there was the first Smash Ultimate DLC fighter reveal at the Game Awards. People went in expecting Metroid games for some reason, but even though we didn't get Metroid, what we did get was Joker from Persona 5, which was an extremely surprising pick. It was so left field, and Reggie even kind of suggested that all the other DLC fighters would be wacky picks as well, so now the sky's really the limit as far as who can potentially come to Smash. They built up a huge amount of extra hype literally minutes before Ultimate launched, and it was a perfect end to the Smash reveal saga that was 2018. So that leads us back to right now. We've covered all the major stuff that Nintendo did this year. Well, I guess we didn't really talk about the 3DS, but what is there to say? Yokai Watch, WarioWare, a few ports and remasters. Detective Pikachu was pretty original. It was a modest lineup, nothing incredibly exciting, but enough to get a little extra mileage out of the little system. I will say that I didn't expect Nintendo to support it for this long, and it had enough games in 2018 with even more scheduled for 2019 that now I'm just like, yeah, I really have no idea when they will phase it out. Could be next year, could be 3 years from now, who knows? Guess we'll have to wait and see. But looking ahead for Switch, I find myself in a fairly different place than I was last year. Last year, I was pumped. I was basking in the light of this new Nintendo that seemed capable of doing no wrong. The future was nothing but bright. But, like I said before, this year was something of a reality check. The Nintendo Switch Online stuff was disappointing, but really not entirely unexpected. Honestly, I wasn't actually deluded enough to think that they would never screw up ever again, and if they were going to screw up with anything, it was gonna be their online service. I think we all probably assumed as much. Really, it was Kirby and Mario Tennis that spooked me the most. Until that point, I really thought that all their games were gonna start getting an extra little kick of ambition, because they had finally started listening to the fans and giving them what they wanted. But instead, I was hit with the reality that this Switch-era quote-unquote new Nintendo can still put out games that end up falling way, way below expectations. I can still get a new game from Nintendo and feel all super hyped to play it and pop it in my Switch and turn it on and just be like, oh. So now I'm starting to feel a little paranoid. I keep thinking, what's the next game to fall prey to this strategy of only doing the bare minimum amount of work or releasing half a game and updating it later? This was the kind of thing I expected from pre-Switch Nintendo. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, for instance, looked way worse than Aces. But now that I know they're not completely beyond doing such things, I worry. I worry about what the next victim might be. What if it's Metroid Prime 4? What if I boot up the game only to realize that it's like 6 hours long and has no secrets? What if Animal Crossing ends up being another City Folk situation where it's nearly identical to the title before it with only a few tiny new features? What if Luigi's Mansion 3 ends up having all of Dark Moon's problems and none of the original strengths? Which games are getting big budgets and plenty of development time, and which ones are getting pushed out to make an easy million sales? What if the successes of both Kirby and Mario Tennis lead Nintendo to realize how little work they can get away with and still make a lot of money? What if Smash Ultimate is the last ambitious game they create for the Switch and everything from here on out ends up feeling like upscaled 3DS games with very little content? I know that's probably not true. I know very little of that is likely. This mindset is perhaps irrational or overly pessimistic. The unease in my gut is only slight, but it's undeniable. There are so many games that have already been announced for the next year or two. So many games I can't wait to get my hands on, and I definitely am excited. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to tell you that I think Nintendo is just gonna go full Scrooge and completely self-destruct. They're one of the few big companies in the industry that actually enjoys making and selling video games and doesn't see us merely as sheep with fat wallets. They're still Nintendo, and their 2019 is most definitely poised to blow 2018 out of the water. But that niggling little fear is always there, man. Always there, way in the back of my head. And in the dark of night, as I lie awake in my bed, I can't help but ponder what the future might hold, or what I might be saying this time next year. Let's not end things on a low note, though. I've got one more thing to talk about, and I saved it for the end because its implications are massive and help to assuage a ton of my fears and doubts. I won't go too far into it because I think I want to do a full video sometime soon, but if you haven't heard, Nintendo has abolished their creator program and changed their policy regarding usage of their games on YouTube. Basically, this means that moving forward, they're going to allow content creators, like myself, to use footage of their games without copyright flagging videos, thus rendering them unable to generate ad revenue. Again, I'll talk about it more later, but just know that this is huge. This is a massive shift in their mindset, and it paves the way for more great Nintendo content on YouTube than ever. And even if 2018 was something of a breather year with lots of ports and smaller titles, even if some of the actual new games ended up disappointing, even if Nintendo Switch Online turned out to be pretty blah and they told us that we weren't getting a virtual console, even if that image of a perfect Nintendo as formed by 2017 has been slightly cracked, well, this YouTube thing might not mean much to a lot of you, but it means a whole lot to me. Games come and go, some end up good, some end up less good, but things like this can signal major internal changes. And as a content creator, I couldn't have asked for a better announcement to cap off another year of Nintendo. Not even Pikmin 4. Okay, well, no. Pikmin 4 would have obviously been better. Pikmin 4 will be better than everything. So that's it. That's the year. I've reviewed all the major games, I've reflected on the last 300 some odd days of Nintendo as a whole, I've predicted and wished for next year. That's all there is to do. So, I guess just tune in next time for my top 10 games of 2018. Let's keep this end of year train rolling!